Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Patrick D. McCoy, and it's wonderful to see all of you here as we amplify this thing, lift music and black labor. And what better time it is to amplify this thing when we talk about the contributions, particularly of African Americans, as we explore this theme of music and labor and how it all comes into play. I have assembled for CAAPA this august body for this panel, 3 people who I know pretty well, and so this conversation will be like, talking to friends. So I hope you will engage with us. I want to start by exploring several different aspects when we talk about work and labor as it pertains to the performing arts. You need a good lawyer. We have that represented. We have music and the arts represented in our churches and in our schools. And also we have the arts represented from the standpoint of your performing artists. And so all of those things will be lifted up here. So at this time, I want to start here with Michele Cober, who comes from the background not only being a lawyer or an attorney, but also being a professional soprano on the opera stage. And so I want to give her an opportunity as we kind of go around the panel first so you can hear from their own words what they do in their place in this arena of work, arts, and from the African American perspective. So Michele, if you would, go ahead and tell the audience basically your job title and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here, Patrick. Always a pleasure to see you. I'm Michele Cober. I'm an attorney. I'm a graduate of Howard University School of Law, and yes, of course. And I also have a bachelor's in music performance and master in opera performance from University of Maryland, College Park, right down the street. Day to day, I work as an attorney and a public policy professional for a major telecommunications company, which is a lot of external facing work that I do, and it is part of my background as a performer. I get to speak and talk a lot and advocate on behalf of the company, so some of the performance attributes and things that I learned are very applicable to my day-to-day life at work now. And I do also occasionally sing here and there, sometimes more begrudgingly than others, because one thing we will talk about today with work is actually making a living. And sometimes as an artist, that is where we get hung up. It's really hard to make a living as a singer, as a musician, as a performer, and we'll explore those topics today, but that was part of the reason why I went to law school, because we have to earn a living, and it can be very difficult as an artist sometimes. So we'll talk more about that today.
Thank you so much. So this next panelist, Mr. Grayland Snead, this is a full circle moment because Grayland and I went to Virginia State University together, sang the university choir. So it's an honor, a particular honor to have him on the panel today. Grayland, could you share with the audience from the perspective of your work and not only being in the public school teaching music, but also in the church?
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity, Patrick. Again, my name is Grayland Snead Jr. I'm the core director at John Francis Education Campus in Washington, D.C. And I also am the director of music at National United Methodist Church. Spent a lot of time working in education. This is 19 years in education now. I've taught from all levels, from university down to pre-K. So both public, private, have had lots of experiences in education. Currently, I'm working on my doctorate in education from Drexel University in educational leadership and policy and management. And I definitely enjoy the transformative power that music provides to us all. Working specifically in church for a long time as a church musician. I've worked in different denominations, and I'm also a tenor elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So music is something that is intertwined with spirituality, and I'm grateful to be at the executive level in all the organizations.
Thank you so much. And certainly, last but not least, another dear friend of the panel, Mr. Keenan McCarter. So Keenan has a myriad of musical things, and I'll let him introduce those aspects of his career to you. Yeah, go ahead, Keenan.
Hello, my name is Keenan McCarter. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm very grateful to be here, and thanks for inviting me, Patrick. I have a bachelor's in vocal performance from Alabama State University and a master's in vocal performance from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. I'm currently an active duty soldier in the United States Army. My job classification, MOS, is 42 Sierra, which makes me a bandsman, a military musician. I am Sergeant First Class, E7 there. I am going on 12 years in August. I'm also a freelance actor in the DMV area. I've performed at Ford's Theater, Signature Theater, and Olney Theater. I do that in my spare time, and I'm also a vocal instructor at Metropolitan School of the Arts in Virginia. I teach Mondays now. And I'm a self-produced singer, songwriter, and also a newly event space entrepreneur. So.
Thank you so much. Let's welcome all three of our panelists. So I'm going to jump right in because the first thing that comes to mind, Michele kind of alluded to it. You know, a lot of times when you're in the arts, and particularly as a singer, first of all, it's hard to make a living as a singer. As you know, living particularly in this area is very expensive. You know, to just think that, oh, I'm just gonna sing, and you have to eat. So, but the thing I want to start with Michele, because as I just mentioned, and just want to reiterate, it's a lot of work. So Michele, you being a lawyer and a singer, being a complete musician, talk to us about how crucial it is to know some semblance of law, entertainment law, basic things, just to be on the up and up as far as you manage your career.
So I think it's really important, and I mentioned that I have 2 music degrees, and at no point during my studies did we learn any sort of business of music or legal, entertainment law, contracts, basic classes. And so I think that was a real gap in my education that I hope is being identified now in schools of music, because it led to a story that I'm going to tell you all when I was out in my professional life. I was out singing, I was on tour, the conditions on the tour were deplorable. I was on the road, and I had to just leave. I could not continue on this tour because it was damaging my voice, singing in these conditions, and it just was not what the contractor or what the producer had promised would be happening when we would be out on tour. And so I left. And then 3 weeks later, I have a letter from a lawyer threatening me, and I was just terrified. I was mortified. I did not know where to get any help. I didn't know my rights at all. And it really was one of the catalysts to me deciding that I was actually going to go to law school, because I needed more for my career at that point anyway. I was just sort of burnt out as a singer. But I also felt like was just missing so much in terms of knowledge of business and how the world works and just all of these other things that I didn't feel like I learned in my music education. And it turned out, like, first day of contracts class, I realized that they had breached the contract. I had no need to be scared or fearful or anything of what happened, because they were obviously in breach. But at the time, as a singer, I didn't know any of that at that moment. So that is why I think it's so important to understand these concepts and broader ideas about business and law and other things. And I will just call out a resource for those who are in this area. There's the Washington Area Lawyers for the Arts, and they do pro bono work for artists for all sorts of different types of topics. Of course, I didn't know about them either when I was going through this crisis and thinking I was going to get sued by this big, production company. But it's really important to have some foundation in basic contracts, not necessarily entertainment law, copyright, intellectual property. Those are more complicated, and I don't think you need to go there. But just understanding some basics around contracts, I think, is really important.
Thank you so much. Now I want to continue this this area of thought because COVID, in my opinion, really put the spotlight on a lot of this stuff. You know, people were coming out with all kinds of virtual projects and things, and next thing you know, one person does it, and then you see it reproduced, and there's no trademark, no copyright, or anything like that. But Grayland, I want to move to you. From the standpoint of the church, I know, especially with virtual streaming, you have to go through all the licensing and the copyright, etc. Talk to me a little bit about that transition that you had to make as far as your church work.
Well, in church, you know, during the pandemic, everybody was trying to figure out, everyone was trying to figure out how to maneuver in the online space. Several churches would begin to stream music, and you know, ultimately they would be hit with fines for playing music that wasn't copywritten. There were several seminars that church members attended, myself included, on what would be appropriate. And typically, churches now use different licenses like CAAPA, which allows them to stream music legally and perform music within church to prevent any sort of legal ramifications for having worship online. But during the COVID pandemic, it was definitely a challenging time, and it was something where churches and artists and those of the like had to figure out. So,
thank you. So, Keenan, I know that you probably have to consider all this, being an independent artist, recording, and then aside from that aspect of your career, I'm sure, just your obligations, your military obligations. Talk to me a little bit about, how do you see the law and copyright these things as you prepare in your career?
Okay, so first, Your Honor, it's hard enough just learning how to produce one song. That's already such a heavy lift. And in acquiring assistance with that, most artists are so excited for an opportunity that we completely disregard any kind of law or any kind of contracts, myself included. And I know a lot of other people that I know have signed contracts without combing through them. And even if you do comb through them, a lot of the language you don't even understand. So now it's great that I have Miss Michele over here who I can give a call and say, hey, am I in good hands? But yeah, it's hard enough. It's hard enough just to create and to find your way through the field. When I started out as a young singer, I had no idea that how much work it was going to be outside of what you get in that little university bubble. It's so much more than singing. It's so much more than technique. It's so much more than acting. You have to be your own producer. You have to be your own lawyer. You have to be your own social media manager. You have to. It's just way more than any one person can comprehend. And you have to have a team of people and a support system who's going to be there to walk you through all of this stuff.
Yeah, I just want to add to that too. It's really entrepreneurship, and you are the product and the service, and have to treat it as your business. And what are the talent is just like the baseline. You have to have that. You have to be excellent. You have to know all of your music and show up in a unique and special way so that people do want to come and hear you and hire you. But you do have to do your marketing and your finances. That's a huge piece of this when you're just maybe getting paid on a 1099 or something, and then you realize you have taxes you need to pay. There's so many different pieces of it that we are not taught to treat it as a business. It's just like, oh, if you're super talented and you work hard, it's all gonna work out. And that's not actually true. There's a lot of different moving parts that you have to treat this as, to go back to today's theme, work, labor, a business, employment. It has to be treated that way.
Thank you.
I just want to also add that I have several friends who have composed their own music, they've streamed it, and for whatever legal purpose, they have muted those music citing copyright. Now, individuals have copywritten their own music, and it's still, there's some blocks in terms of having your music being streamed. Can you speak more to that? Why that might happen?
I'm not an entertainment lawyer. I don't do copyrights and trademarks and things, but I would think it would be some sort of licensing issue. But they might need to actually go and work with whatever social media entity that is, so that their music, that the social media entity can play their music on the platform. So it's a two-way street, not just with the artist, but it's with that company as well. Let's go back to a contract thing, probably.
Thank you. And Grayland, I'm glad you brought that up, because just recently it was Mozart's birthday. And I'm like, oh, happy birthday, Mozart. So I had a recording of my former choir singing a piece by Mozart, which is in public domain, and that very thing happened. They muted it all over the place, and I had to file a little, dispute. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, in the beginning of this talk, I kind of alluded to finding balance and things like that, your typical day. So I want to kind of bring that back to the fore. So Michele, you talked about your career. You're working at this firm, as an attorney, and then you were operating soprano. When did you make the decision that you were going to curtail the performance aspect of your career?
I think it goes back to what I've been talking about already. I didn't realize that my performance career really needed to be a business. And once I got out of school and really had to lean into the business aspect of it, because I needed to be working full-time as a singer, I quickly got very burnt out. It was not enjoyable anymore. I didn't feel joy at all when I was singing. And I definitely needed a break. And so in the spirit of a true overachiever, I went to law school when I took a break. But when I didn't feel joy from it, when it wasn't like, there are so many musicians who will literally curl up in a ball and die if they can't sing. And for me, I didn't sing. I wouldn't even sing in the car. Radio was off. I'm not singing in the shower. I don't even want to hear my own voice. And it was for at least a year. So that, I think, distinguishes me from a lot of my musical friends who just can't live without it. It burnt me out so bad that I was like, I don't even want this anymore. But then I was able to come back to it later, but I think the burnout is what really kind of sent me over the edge, Patrick.
And a little saying that I always have in my head, most people don't even know that I sing or play because I'm always writing or doing things like this. But I always say, fund your own passion. So I had a job downtown. I was working for the government, and I was stress-free because I was able to work this job, sustain a comfortable lifestyle, but also fund my own things. I didn't have to beg this person, can you fund this website? Can you fund this opportunity? So I would say to anybody too, find ways to fund your own passion. Grayland, so you have a lot going on. Going back to this balance question, you have church, you have the ministerial responsibilities. I know you have the technical stuff, but I've seen you at work. How do you do it all?
Well, you have to be passionate about all of these things in order to maintain that balance. Providing boundaries and accepting things as they come. Also, being a single father, that can also be a challenge in trying to pursue your musical passion. But in terms of being in education, I have found that while working with children, working with adults, seeing the joy that it emits from when they grow, or they have these aha moments, or even working in the church where you might be working on a piece that they find is particularly difficult, and they seem to grow, and it brings connectivity to those spaces. That is what keeps me going. That is something that continues to drive within me. And in education, I found that there aren't as many opportunities that are provided for young people, and policies should be changed such that more funding for music education is made available, because music is such a powerful, transformative practice that it being that it's underfunded in the way that it is and devalued in the way that it is very disheartening. And we went to college with some very amazing performers who poured hours upon hours into us, and I too believe that they did it so long because they enjoyed it. They enjoyed watching us grow.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Ayana, the director here, and I'm talking. I'm a reporter for the Afro Informer, New York News. And we were talking about young people getting into music profession. I interviewed the young lady that did the lead for Keenan. And I was telling Ayana how I was blown away. I had like a little child in there, and I was very happy for her. But one of the things that you're talking about now is the funding. And I wonder, when we talk, because my story is about labor, this piece with you, and the difference in opportunities that come within the labor movement, but the things that have gone away. And if I hear you correctly, I'm not a STEM person. I would die. I would be broke. That's not me. My grandson, my son died for me. I'm a writer, musician. I've always been an artist one. And I've noticed over the last 20, 30 years, you can be artsy, there's nothing out there. It wants you to do robotics. I don't care about robotics. It wants you to do mathematics. I hate mathematics. It wants you to do no. Where's the essay? Where's the song? Where's the story? And I wonder, so how are you addressing that? Because it seems to me that we're going to get less and less children who are being brought up and trained, as you're saying, but that's all they want to do. That lights their fire, and maybe they're being pushed somewhere else because there's nothing else to do. I know what that's like. I left IBM. I made a lot of money. I was miserable everything, and so I went to seminary. It was my money. So I mean, I really want to know that because that's part of what I want to write about. I can't write it in my own words. But just that delta from, you could, at one point, here's the question, you could be almost anything you wanted, for a while. And then it seems like they started kind of changing the curriculums and the protocols and programs. And I wonder, where are we now? Well, I mean, where are we now with the icon? What should we as Black folk be doing in order to give more children and others like you are adults? Everybody don't live like Beyonce. You can still do it, but that's you know what I mean. So that's my question.
Well, there are systemic challenges within education that prevent music from flourishing. We need more advocates to speak up for educational policy, such that it begins by stop telling children that they can't find work in music, because there are definitely opportunities to find lucrative funding for a career path in music. Also, I think we as a nation have, as you said, shifted our focus from the whole child. As you mentioned, you talked about how at one point in life you could be whatever you wanted to be. It was advertised that way. And now we've moved more to a STEM society. And just doing research on educational policy, there's a report that just came out that said that we are performing at a very low rate in math and in science. And there was a trend to incorporate the arts. It was, to change the acronym from STEM to STEAM.
Right.
But they're largely moving away from that. And ultimately, this is something that I'm very passionate about in understanding not only why it was removed, but how it can be re-entered. Because based on the research that I have done, music is for some students that I teach every day, is the only reason that they come to school. It has so many benefits in promoting, social emotional learning. It gives opportunities for students to find therapy and find their voice in the traumatic world that they live in. Music is, again, as I said, transformative, and ultimately, there's this dichotomy of music is a luxury, it's not a necessity. But they don't understand that music gives so many life skills. For those patients who suffer with Alzheimer's, music therapy provides a way for their minds to come alive. Music helps with neuroplasticity. Music is a way that teaches and is provides there's so many life benefits to music at all levels. But for some reason, people view it as a luxury and view it as something that is not a necessity. And so we need more change within our educational system. And that's something I'm very interested and passionate about. And so that's why I'm at Drexel now.
I think to follow up on that too, I think that the emphasis on STEM is career oriented. So science, technology, engineering, and math. And so you could look at all sorts of different career possibilities under that umbrella. It's very vague and different a lot of times as a musician. Or it's either, you go be a teacher or a professor, you're a freelancer. It's not looked at as you just have a myriad of possibilities in terms of what your career can look like. And it is a lot of times very much a crapshoot for us. You have to audition, you're at a cattle call, you don't know what's going to happen that day. Someone who liked you last week has now decided that you're not their favorite anymore. So it's such a much more volatile and unstable career path that I think that may be part of why it is de-emphasized and less valued as it should be. Now, to your point, the things that I learned and the level of discipline and excellence that I had to execute as a musician is, I have not seen, other than like doing surgery where somebody is like bleeding out if you don't get it right. If you're standing on stage, 3,500 people in the audience, unamplified, live, you gotta get it right. And so, there's no do-overs. And so we have just a level of precision and excellence that we always have to operate under that has translated into other areas. And I think if we put more emphasis on that, it could be something where people understand how valuable music is and how transferable those skills are. And we can do some both and here. You have a lot of people up here today who are both and. We are musicians and other things. But the foundation that we learned as musicians is what set us up to be able to be excellent in those other parts of our careers.
So Keenan, I'm going to move to you, kind of continue this chain of thought, because in your career in the military, you've had some world stages, some great opportunities. How do you use those things to kind of pivot to the personal aspirations that you have as a musician?
Oh, absolutely. Wonderful question. I have learned so much from being in the military. I've grown so much. I wasn't even into musical theater when I joined in 2013. I only knew gospel, I knew pop, I knew R&B, I knew soul, and I knew opera. I don't know if I said that already, but I learned about musical theater there. I learned about music production. I learned about programming. I learned about so much stuff through the military, and I also had this ability to find my own little bubble of that where I can generate all that knowledge into my own entrepreneurship goals.
Thank you. And you almost stole my thunder because I wanted to definitely hit diversity, equity, inclusion, and without over politicizing the subject. I want to talk to you all because first of all, I want to make it clear, if it hasn't been abundantly clear, that you have excellence represented up here, all the way through and through. So I just want to say, well, thank you first of all for that. But secondly, as far as diversity, equity, inclusion, with so much emphasis on those aspects, it's almost as if it didn't exist, you would exist. And it's obviously that the hard work is here. Could you all maybe be willing to jump in and talk about how do you feel that the aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion has added to your career, if it has added or elevated you in some fashion in your career? I know that's a lot.
So when you say elevated, are you asking whether we got opportunities because
Like a
of it?
level playing field. Or you had to work harder.
I would say the latter, working harder. In graduate school, I attended a predominantly white university, and I was the only African American male in my cohort. Despite all of my efforts, despite all of being the first there, the last to leave, always submitting my assignments early, one reason or another, I had a particular professor who would constantly devalue my work. And I worked hard. We worked as a group, in graduate school, you do a lot of group work. And my colleagues would notice that. They would notice certain things. But for fear of retribution, they didn't want to get into trouble. They were silent. And it wasn't until I made my claims known to another professor about what I was experiencing, because that wasn't the first person I shared my concerns with. That woman was the one who advocated for me. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Maybe I was the token. Who knows? I don't know. But we need people to advocate for those marginalized individuals, those who are voiceless, so that they can have an opportunity. And if it hadn't been for that particular professor, I wouldn't have finished, my degree. So I think the removal of DEI, within our context in the government, in education and other aspects and facets of the world is a detrimental thing to do to those who, have, we can look around the room at these wonderful pictures in history of those who were marginalized or cast aside. It gives people an opportunity to, as you say, level the playing field, but we still work from the bottom. Even when we would like to think that things are level and equal, they're really not. So,
Michele?
I think things have gotten a lot better in the last, I think in particular in opera, since I sort of bowed out and went to law school. I went to law school 15, 16 years ago. Because I remember when I was in studying music, it was either Kathleen Battle, your favorite, Patrick, Jesse Norman, Leontine Price, Marian Anderson. Those were that was it. And as a singer, you fell into one of those categories. So I'm a little tall, so I didn't fall into the Kathleen Battle category. At the time I was singing, I was a light lyric soprano, so I wasn't singing Leontine Price repertoire. So you walk in and they're like, okay, which one are you? Are you Jesse Norman? Are you Kathleen Battle? Are you Leontine Price? And I'm like, no, I'm Michele. I'm not one of them. But I think now, I mean, just talking today, we're talking about performances that are happening in the area now, and there's so much more diversity, so many different types of sopranos, Black sopranos now who you see. And then you do see the ones that are in the tradition of the Leontina Price. We just had a wonderful run of Aida at the Met, with a Black Aida.
Angel Blue.
Angel Blue. And so now we are outside of those, and I'm speaking as a Black soprano in opera. I think some of those barriers have come down where we see Black sopranos of all different types, from the soubrette, doing the coloratura, heavier repertoire as well. And then we have more mezzos than just one. We used to only have Denise Graves. So I think things have definitely improved, and I think the next generation of singers coming up too will just add to those improvements.
Okay, so I try not to think too much about anything negative when it comes to racial experiences. Of course, I've had them. I won't go into detail, but they have been more of a driving force in my career than anything. And it's not the way I see things, it's not a terrible burden to have to be the best. You know, you pay that cost to be the best. Leontina Price. When I was in grad school, I used to listen to operatic interviews, mostly from African American performers, and they're always asked about their experiences being Black in opera. And I remember Leontina Price says they have their freedoms to choose who they want, but when you step up at bat, it's just like any other sporting event or any other competition. You step up at bat, and when you knock it out of the park, it's nothing anyone can say about it. So my goal has been to just knock it out of the park. When the playing fields are level, you know, of course, when you're prepared and you've done all the work, you're ready to knock it out of the park. But you have to just be undeniable no matter what is going on in America or what is going on anywhere. And that should be everybody's goal in whatever job that they're seeking to do, is to just be your very best and be undeniable.
Thank you. So the underlying theme is work. It's not just singing. It's not just playing an instrument. It takes hard work and preparation. And Michele, I think it was you, or I'm not sure which one, but I want to go back to the whole aspect of when you were in undergraduate school, you're a music major. I can attest to they did not teach the business of music. You just learned the songs, got ready for your jury, your hearings, and you just, you know, Hail Mary and prayed that you got through it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. We're almost at the end of our time together, and I hope that you all can think of some additional questions to ask. But I want to go back, or kind of go further as we close, about the relevance of music, you know, as it pertains to work. Because again, a lot of times people say, "Oh, they're just singing, oh, it's entertainment." Could you talk a little bit more how you feel that music plays an active role in society as far as building up society as opposed to it just being entertainment?
Yeah, it's so hard because, and we probably get asked this all the time, to just sing for free. People look at it as a hobby. You can tell them you have 6 music degrees and they're still like, okay, well, can you come sing at the cookout?
You're feeding.
And, you know, we have worked hard for this and really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and labor into it. It is, though, something that it just underpins our culture. It is a cornerstone, whether you hear music in the background for a movie, whether you are singing your favorite song, whether it's some catalyst that happened in your life and you remember what song was in the background. But I think that the artists themselves, and not seeing the artists as actual laborers and workers, and it's not just this ethereal thing. Someone put talent and work into it, and you have to value that too. It's just not this, whatever you are hearing, there was a lot of work and blood and sweat and tears that went into it, so that by the time that it gets to you, especially if it's like on the radio or TV, this is music that has just been poured into by hugely talented people. And I think if we can keep that at the forefront and value the talent and work that goes into it, then maybe we can look at it and elevate it to the level of importance that it really should have in our society.
Grayland?
I just want to leave with you that music is not an afterthought. It's a fundamental force that permeates every aspect of our society. Music unites communities, music is transformative, it's therapeutic, it transcends cultural, racial, economic barriers. And we're in a very interesting time in life, but it's imperative that we protect, promote, and invest in music education, artistic expression. We must understand that data, history, and lived experiences at all points to the same conclusion that music is essential to human development, social cohesion, and cultural evolution. We must understand that we must ensure that music remains a priority in policy, in education, and in public life.
Keenan?
Don't abandon music. We are such a creative group of people, and we have created so much American music that we abandon for what's next. And I would employ all of us to support those musicians that look like us in different genres, and I applaud Beyonce for doing this, you know. But support those black country artists and those black jazz artists and black rock and roll artists, but also continue to create music and be on the bleeding edge of what's to come.
All right, there you have it. Thank you all so much. And at this time, I want to open the floor. I want to open the floor up for some questions, but before I do that, I want to say hello, Sonia Kitchen. Good to see you. And hopefully we can call you up for brief remarks. But at this time, if there are any questions, comments, observations, we will welcome them at this time. And I'll come over to you with the microphone. Anybody?
I don't know.
It's very straight, so.
Thank you. Well, you're just starting out and you don't have the concerts yet or anything like that. And I heard you say something about getting a team with it. So how do you pay them? How do you get paid? So is it, and each of you said something about having an extra job and all that type of thing. So who pays it? Do you get a loan or what do you do?
It's difficult. So I went to the Grayland School of the Arts also in DC, and thankfully my parents were able to pay for a lot of things in the beginning. But at a certain point, I felt like I was just about to bankrupt them because it is super expensive. Voice lessons are maybe, at this point, they're probably $150 an hour at least. And then not only do you have the voice lessons, you also have coaching. So you need to go to somebody else and pay them another $150. And this is like multiple times a week. Auditions cost a lot of money. So by the time loans were involved for sure. And then by the time I got out of graduate school, thankfully I was working with Washington Opera Course, which is a good union job, back to our theme on labor. So I've been a member of the American Guild of Musical Artists for many years, which is a great union for musicians. But I had to have like either side jobs, loans, and scholarships, of course. Competitions are a big thing, so if you win a competition, you may get a lot of money that you can use to fund some of the activities. But it is a very expensive undertaking. And so that, I think, is another barrier to entry for a lot of people. And thanks to organizations like CAAPA, who provide scholarships and other opportunities. But that's like the number one question of how am I going to support myself? And that gets even more critical as you get older. At some point, you want to move out of your parents' house. You are kicked off of their health insurance policy. You just need to live a normal life, and it is really difficult, especially if you haven't thought that through as part of your undergrad and graduate education, there was never an emphasis on, well, how am I going to actually monetize this? It's hard.
I would say, in terms of funding, speaking from someone who, came from the other side of the tracks here, we grew up very poor. My mother was a teenager when she had me, and so, I'm the first to go to college, so of course funding was just not there. A lot of support came from church, community groups. Those were ways that supported me even throughout college. There were opportunities to sing in church, play piano, so I had opportunity to play, instruments in church, drums, piano, singing. But I didn't come from a family that had a lot of financial resources. So participating in competitions like Dr. Bird's had me in a national NATS competition, won scholarships for that. And then outside of that, I never forget my senior recital. My accompanist said, "Grayland, what are you going to do?" I was like, "I'm going to go around the world and perform. I'm going to travel the world and perform." He said, "Well,
that's what we all think."
You might want to pick up an education class just in case you don't, pass that audition. So, you have to figure out other ways. They say that performers don't teach and teachers don't perform, but that's not always the case. So, finding creative ways to, if it's something you're passionate about, finding creative ways to generate income can lead you to the path of success.
Well, the good thing about nowadays, after COVID, people can telework. I've done a show with someone who was on his computer doing rehearsal and working his 9-to-5 job. And I remember, I won't promise none. But I remember thinking, I wish I had that back in 2013. But I didn't. So I knew that I was going to need some money, and that military opportunity showed up, and I took it. And that's what funds my dreams and my goals and ambitions.
You again express their appreciation for this panel.
I'm sorry. I gotta get this story done. You just want to help us out. So, the question is, I thought when I read the specs on this, I was gonna get something different, and it's not good. But I still have something burning in my head. And that is, in terms of labor, you go back to the A. Randolph days when blacks were just migrating, from south to the north. There were songs that they carried with them, and I don't hear people talk about those anymore, and it bothers me. And I don't know that we're teaching. Because you always, having a talk with Jesus about my trouble, and talk about like that. In some of the stuff now, I don't know if it moves the spirit. And I'm just talking about labor and the gospel message. If you could address that, why are they not moving in sync, as it were, the way they were when my mom and dad were coming from Alabama, et cetera, and you had Greenville to get safely from city to city.
I don't think that they're taught in schools, but I would defer to our educator here. But I went to a performing arts school, so those songs, that kind of history, that legacy, and understanding how music and these songs that were passed down from slavery in particular, and spirituals were so important, especially in the civil rights movement. That was part of what we learned as part of our music education. But that was a music education at a performing arts school that was obviously on a deeper level than what you may get in a regular music curriculum. So I think that some of that history outside of church is not taught the way that it used to be. And even if you look at protests from maybe like 2, 3, 4 years ago with George Floyd, I didn't hear anybody out there singing some of the old spirituals that we know very well. It's just not a tradition that I think is being passed on outside of church. And church is also not underpinning a lot of these movements that they used to. So we do still have ministers, such as Reverend Al Sharpton, for example, who leads movement, but the way that ministers, A. Philip Randolph was an organizer of the March on Washington, and we hear about Martin Luther King, but we don't hear about A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin and others. And that was church. That was rooted in church, and so that's where those Negro spirituals and songs Marian Anderson sang at the March on Washington. Those aren't the types of way that we see movement showing up now, and I think that is why you may not see that connection the way that we used to see it historically.
For the interest of time, thank you all so much for our panelists. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank everybody else again for coming out. And I wanted to draw your attention, inside your program, you're going to find a flyer for another event we have coming up at another one of our arts centers within the county. This is a similar Black music and labor theme, but this is a concert. So if anyone who is interested, please take a look at this flyer, and there's information on how to buy tickets right here. And at this time, I'd like to ask Diana Coleman back up from CAAPA to say a few words.
Thank you. Let's have another round of applause for our panelists. Thank you all so much for bringing your insight and your expertise. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being an incredible moderator. CAAPA sits at the cornerstone of a lot of this conversation and what we're talking about in terms of accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the arts. A lot of our programs help, to Michelle's point, help support young emerging musicians and other artists who want to become performing artists, who might not have the resources to pay for that, young artist program in Italy, or those voice lessons that they need to have covered, that become quite expensive. And so if you are interested in any of the information that we have in terms of the resources that we provide for young emerging artists, please come and see me. We are always looking for support, physical support and financial support. I wouldn't be doing my job if I did not plug that. If you would like to make a donation to any of our programs, please see our website or see me personally, and I'd be more than happy to speak with you about how you can become more involved in the efforts of the